Today we're going to talk about weathering with India ink solution. So let's get started with this right now. I'm Tom Kovichak and this is Tom's Trains and Things. This channel was created to help other modelers who are in need of guidance in pursuing their dream of building a model railroad. I did a video showing my tunnel portal that I had weathered with India ink and alcohol solution last week. And I promised you that I would show you how that I did it. Now, I do a lot of weathering with India ink solution. When I say the solution, it's India ink and alcohol. Either 70% alcohol or 91% alcohol. I prefer the 70% alcohol because it's not as strong. I only use it on wood and plaster or hydrocal castings. Not had any luck using it on styrene to weather, so I kind of stay away from it. There are different brands of it. I have Speedball. This is used for calligraphy. One thing that I found with this is that it settles. I don't know if you could see it here, but it's clear and the ink is at the bottom. So what I have to do is every time I use it, I shake it up. There is also a Higgins brand. I had that before and I didn't have any problems with it. There's also Bombay. I have a white one. And I don't know why I had white. I think I was experimenting with it, but it must not have turned out too good because I don't see any bottles of white solution here. Now, I have seen modelers that use black and brown together or black and blue together. I've never tried that, and I may try it someday, but right now we're just going to talk about strictly black India ink for weathering our products. Plaster castings, hydrocal castings, and wood. Every one of my wood buildings I used the India ink solution, either before I painted it or after I painted it. And basically you just have to experiment with it. Now, what is the correct solution? Well, for me there is no correct solution. You just play around with it. Most modelers would say 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. What I used to do was I had one bottle where I mixed 1 teaspoon and I had another bottle where I mixed 2 teaspoons. But anyway, this is a good idea to put them in small containers. Going back to the solution, 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. It's better to apply the solution lighter than it is darker, so you have to play around with it. Sometimes I have to add and sometimes I have to dilute it a little bit. I have to put more alcohol in a container or something like that. This one right here, this one is completely full because I had this one too dark, and so what I had to do was dump some of this out into another container and add more alcohol to get it to lighten up some. So the basic thing is you just have to experiment with what you're doing to get the right effect on whatever material you're using. Now, why do you dilute this with alcohol? The alcohol is a surfactant. It lets the ink go into all the little cracks and crevices and nooks and crannies to give you that effect of a shadow, especially in the rocks. Now, what I showed you on the tunnel portal, it goes into the little cracks, into the grains of the wood, and it lets it stand out, and it's darker as it flows inside. So you get that effect of, you know, the shadows and everything. Now, this is the first time that I did it on a material where it was not wood or a plaster casting. This is the adhesive-backed Chooch Enterprise material. It worked out pretty good on here. That's the first time I did it on here. It works good on the plaster castings and the wood is because it's able to sink into it. I'm surprised that it works so well on this right here. And I'll show you a part of the video that I did for this where I weathered this, and I'll show you how I did it on here also. So let's get going with that already. Enough talking about this stuff, huh? I have my base coat of paint on my tunnel portal. It's the light tan camouflage. And what I'll do after this is I'll take some of my India ink solution and I'll weather this. I just tested a couple of the short pieces that I cut off the bottom of the wings for the tunnel portal, the retaining walls. And here's a piece that I just did. And really it's not that hard. I just dab it on there. And you can see it just fills in the detail there. And you can put it on as dark as you want. Okay, see how it is if you just put a light coating on there. This is where there was a lot that was left behind, and as I drag it through, you can see there was less on there. So we'll just dab it like this and let it sink in. And right in the center, we're going to need a lot of it from the smoke from the steam engines. So we're going to put extra right here. It'll be extra thick. Okay, that's a start right there. And we could just do a little bit extra on there. Just drop it down in there, right in the center. Not too bad. Just let that sit for a while. I see a little white spot right there. I let this tunnel portal dry for a little bit. It's been about a half an hour, and I'm going to add some rust to the bolts that are on the wood, and I'm going to put some highlights on here like I did with the bridge pier with a little bit of white. I'm going to dry brush a little bit of white on there to let some of the wood stand out a little bit better. So it looks pretty good right now. Right up here, it doesn't look that dark on the video, but it's actually real dark. I mean, it looks darker in real life than it does on the video. I think the lights are pretty bright and it doesn't show up that well. Now let's get a close-up of everything that I was talking about here. Now this is the white stuff. It's bamboo, Bombay white. I must have used this someplace, but it didn't work out that well. I have this one here, Speedball, and there's also Higgins. These are the alcohol bottles, and I mix them into smaller bottles so it's easier to work with on the bench. And these 3 bottles right here, they're all different strengths. Here's the bridge pier. And I've added some white highlights on here. I dry brushed some white on there. And then here's the tunnel portal. And like I said in my last video, I'm going to hit all these spikes right here or large nails with rust, and then I'm going to hit some areas on there with the white to give it a little bit of highlight on there also. I'm going to show you a sped up version of me doing the bridge pier, but I'm not going to show you the whole thing. It's going to be a lot quicker than the tunnel portal. But one thing I had to do different on this one here is, since this is not as porous as the wood or the plaster castings, that I had to dab up the alcohol with a paper towel while I was doing it. So that's the only thing different that I did on this. And then after that, I'm going to show you some of the things that I did, some of my work that I did through the years on the rocks, the stone walls, and the buildings. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for just a little bit. Okay. Let me darken this up just a little bit right there. Must have some glue there or something. Keep that right there. Alright. These are all plaster castings right here. Now when I say plaster castings, they may be hydrocal, but I'll just say plaster. It's easier to say plaster casting than hydrocal. Now these are over here, these are Woodland Scenics, and this is the, I think this AIM brand. And this one over here, this is a Chooch Enterprise, but that's a resin casting, and so is that one right there. Now, and you can see the rocks in the background. Now, where I grew up in western Pennsylvania, even though we had the steel mills right there dropping graphite on the rocks and the cliffs and everything, they were always had a yellow tint to them. So what I do is on all my castings of stone and the rocks, I use yellow ochre as the base coat. Now, some people tell you when you're doing plaster to dilute it. I tried diluting it, but it doesn't come out dark enough. I just have to put some more on it. So what I just do is put it full strength, and I use the Woodland Scenics yellow ochre, and I also use the little 2 fluid ounce ones of yellow ochre. All my wood buildings have some form of India ink solution on them. Some of them I put it on before I painted. Some of them I put it on after I painted. And you can see here that, you know, there are different strengths and different effects on them. On dollies in the carpenter shop, and the other garage looking thing has India ink on it first, and then I went over it with a light wash of white to give it that effect right there. Now you can see some rock castings I have here. I have the yellow ochre base coat on it. This is a little bit darker than the rest of them. Over by the tunnel portal, some of those castings are from that I made back in the 80s, and I just put them in there to fit. But all these rock castings, they were weathered with India ink. Now I have the plaster casting and a wood tunnel portal side by side. I have a lot more work to do on crossing rock creeks, so keep an eye out for those videos. And until the next time, we'll see you.